Get to the church blind! Get to the church blind! Go! Now!
I'm Pete Mitchell, and he's Peyton Jones, and you're listening to Hardcore Church Planning, the companion podcast to the Church Planner Podcast and Church Planner Magazine. Each week, we'll bring you interviews from planners who are in the trenches making it happen right now. These active church planners bear it all, share their successes, their failures, and what they'd wish they'd known when they were first starting out. Listen in to discover how God is working in their church plant.
Hey, church planner, here today with an old friend and a guy I knew, way back, who's got a brand new book out. I'm going to let you tell his story, but he is one of the co-hosts of Drunk Ex-Pastors podcast. He and Christian Kingery, if I said that right.
Yep.
Yeah. And so my guest today is Jason Stellman, and the book that we're going to be talking about today is really a fantastic book. I enjoyed this book immensely. It's called Misfit Faith, Confessions of a Drunk Ex-Pastor. So Jason, welcome on to the show.
Thanks, Peyton. Good to talk to you again after so long, man.
It has been long. You know, we knew each other. This is funny because we were in Huntington Beach. And, I remember you had long blonde hair. You were the, it's funny now because we're both bald. I had long hair.
Yeah.
And, you know, we both look like someone out of the Red Hot Chili Peppers. And then, I remember you were teaching a Bible study on Marina High School campus. And I went along and I was thinking, hey, I got kids in the youth group where I was a youth pastor. And I thought, man, I'll go over there. And I remember talking to you, and at that time, I think you were dating a girl from Australia or something, and you were like, hey man, I'm taking off. I don't remember if that was off to Hungary or whatever, but
yeah, it was off to Hungary. Yeah.
And I kind of took over that little group there, and, you kind of, you know, laid the mantle upon me of high school lunchtime ministry. And, you know, I
well, it was funny too. I don't know if you remember this, but you were standing out by my truck, and you looked inside my truck and you saw the book I was reading, which was a second volume of a biography of Martin Lloyd-Jones, and you're like, dude, I'm reading that same book. And I said, oh, no way. Like, what are the chances? And you asked me what part I was on, and we were like literally within a few pages of one another and where we were at in the book. And it's a massive volume. Yeah. So it was from that moment, it was like, dude, we're connected in some way right now. It was a trip.
Absolutely. And that, you know, that kind of went on over the years. So I want to just, ask you, and this is going to be an interesting, question, because we normally start off and we say, how'd you come to faith? And you go into your book, but guys, I got to say, not only are we connected, but Jason's writing style is very much, I'm reading Big Lebowski in here. I'm reading Star Wars. I'm reading Bono, and I'm going, you complete me. This is like a Jerry Maguire, but you know, obviously when we say that, we react like Batman Lego does to, I don't know if you saw that movie, but
I did.
He watches that movie and laughs hysterically when that line is said. So I mean it like that. I don't mean it in the weird way, but the writing style is fantastic. So, you know, I know you've got that in the book, which is very important to what you're getting across in Misfit Faith. But, go ahead and tell us a little bit of your journey. And it is a fascinating journey. So we want to sit with you here and buckle our seatbelt and go through all those twists and turns with you.
Yeah. Well, I was born in Huntington Beach. Woo-hoo. And grew up in Orange County. Kind of a nominally Christian home, I guess. We go to church a couple times a year, but nothing serious. And I started going to Calvary Chapel in Costa Mesa, which is the main Calvary Chapel in that, you know, kind of network of churches when I was in high school. And that's when my faith really kind of took off. You know, I'd been baptized when I was 12, but it didn't really take, you know. But when I started going to Calvary, I got really serious about everything, and you know, was kind of immediately this sort of leader guy on the campus, and eventually right after graduation went to Africa as a missionary with two friends for a year and came back. and I worked on staff at the church for a little while before, and that's when I met you. And then took off to go to Hungary as a missionary with Calvary in '94, where I lived until 2000. And the reason I came back is because I had become a Calvinist a few years earlier, and that's like the unpardonable sin in Calvary.
Sorry, that was the Family Guy reaction to.
Yeah, so I moved home to the U.S. in 2000 and went to seminary in Westminster Seminary in San Diego, where I graduated in '04. And that's when I moved up to the Seattle area where I now live to plant Exile Presbyterian Church. And I was pastoring Exile happily, never had a thought in my head of doing anything else. But in 2008, I stumbled across an article about sola scriptura, the idea that Scripture alone is our sole source of special revelation. And it was written by a guy who used to be a Presbyterian and who's now a Catholic. And he was critiquing that idea. And it, at the time, I was very much not okay with loose ends anywhere in my thinking, anywhere in my theology. Everything had to be buttoned up tight and tucked in and perfect. And so it really bothered me, that I couldn't answer this guy's challenges to the idea of Scripture being our only authority. And that one thing led to another, and 4 years of wrestling with Catholic stuff from 2008 to 2012. I literally did nothing else but wrestle through issues concerning the Bible and the church and authority and justification and faith and works and all this stuff. And I finally couldn't. I lost. I fought and lost that battle. And so in 2012, I stepped down from my ministry and became Catholic that year. And, what's funny, and this gets into the book, is that, I thought that I would just be a Catholic version of my old Protestant self. I thought I'd just be this apologist for Rome and kind of, do in a Catholic context something similar to what I had done before as a pastor. But what I noticed was that, journey, like entering into that Catholic context was just like the beginning, not the end of this journey. Because I've noticed in my own life, and I share about this a lot in the book, I lost that sort of bloodlust, for theological debate. I lost that desire to prove myself right and prove others wrong and defend my views against those who would oppose them. Like all that stuff that drove me as a Protestant just melted away. It was weird. It just left. And I literally didn't care and still don't care anymore if people like what I'm saying, or if they agree, or if they have objections. I don't feel like I just need to run around answering them all the time. It's been a weird, this kind of ideological, theological shift in me gave way to this way bigger existential shift in me, to where I actually wrote a whole different version of Misfit Faith, had a different title. It was a completed manuscript that I submitted. And it was so polemical and so argumentative and defending myself and all this. And I hated it. I asked my publisher, like, can we not, and can I start over? And they actually said, yes, if you don't like it, then start over. And that's what Misfit Faith resulted from.
Which is really rare. I mean, there's a lot of work that goes into it at that stage. So that is rocking. I remember reading that in your book and going, wow. I've read your book almost twice. I took it on an airplane. This book is a cannot put down book. I mean, it is that well written. And then as I was reading it, I tucked it in, cause I put it down and I stuck it in the little, what do you call that thing? Like the little folder that they give you on the front of someone's chair in front of you.
Yeah. Where they stick the magazines in the barf bag and stuff.
So it was left on an airplane, and all I could think of was A, I feel bad because I left Jason's book on there. And B is it kept going through my head, that video, Learning to Fly by the Foo Fighters, that two, airline stewards are going to find it, get high and read it and get converted. And that was kind of my, secret hope.
Hey, you never know. You
never know. But, But the funny thing is, Jay, hearing your story, I don't know if you felt this because you and I kind of followed a similar journey. I got a little blackballed, not quite like you. Didn't get kicked out while I was on the mission field, but I remember looking back years later when I blew out the other side of being a hardcore Calvinist. I remember just becoming. I told you before the interview, I'm like Franken Christian now, where little bits of me sewn together from the different places I've been. But I remember kind of thinking, my timing is really bad because right about the time I stopped being reformed stuff was the hotness. And when I was reformed, it was the devil. And I just remember thinking, man, my timing is really, really bad. But,
you ruined it, dude. It was awesome. It was awesome. And then you became Calvinist and it just blew it.
Yeah, I blew it for everybody, didn't I? I started causing waves. No, it's funny, man, because I just remember at the time thinking if my timing were better, if I had gotten that backwards, it would have been, people could have liked me, darn it. But I think one of the great things that you bring up in this is that humility, and I think that is so important to where not only people outside of the church, but people within the church. Where I think within the church, even people are getting tired. You mentioned being super polemical. Talk about the humility that developed in you, because you and I aren't naturally humble guys, right? I mean, that's fair to say, right? We're not known.
Yeah, that's true.
So tell me a little bit about that, because that really kind of permeates the book. And I don't know the book that was, but I know the book I read, and it was refreshing. What was that journey like that God took you on?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that there's a powerful sense in which the sort of self-understanding of your church, your denomination, your group that you're affiliated with is going to affect your own self-identity as an individual. So when I was a Protestant, and especially when I was a Presbyterian, we understood ourselves to be the antidote to the Roman heresy. And when the whole existence of your church is a response to some prior problem, then it affects you as a person. And so I felt like it was my right and my duty to run around and argue with people and try to convince them, to be Presbyterian and to accept John Calvin into their heart and all this stuff. But when I became Catholic, the Catholic understanding, the Catholic Church's understanding of itself, is completely different than any denomination thinks about itself. A lot of times, Episcopalians or Baptists or Lutherans or Methodists think of Catholics as just another denomination among the pantheon of options out there in the free market. But the Catholic Church kind of doesn't look at itself that way at all. It doesn't look at itself as needing an enemy or a foil to justify its own existence. It's more like we've just always been here, and we're always going to be here. And if all of our enemies somehow disappear tomorrow, it's not going to change anything. Because they don't exist. They don't see themselves as existing to fix some prior problem. And so kind of that sort of started to seep into me, kind of got baked into my bones a little bit. And when it did, it sort of took away the urgency that I used to feel to make sure all of my doctrinal T's were crossed and I's dotted, And I talk about in the book, there's kind of like this audacious and ironic humility, because the claim of the Catholic Church, and trust me, I'm not a good Catholic. We were talking about this before we went on the air. It's like I suck at being Catholic, and I'm okay with that. Sometimes I think the best kind of Catholic is the bad kind. But the claim of the church is so audacious, that we're just the church that's always been here. And the denominations are things that broke off from us at some point. And they come and go, but we're just always going to be here because the gates of hell won't prevail against the church. It's a very audacious claim,
Yeah.
But it actually ironically produced, at least in me, a humility that I'm still growing and I'm still trying to learn, but it definitely produced a tolerance for everyone else, because I wasn't very tolerant before. And being Catholic, oddly, has made me just perfectly okay with other people having different perspectives and other people seeing things differently, perhaps other people thinking that I'm wrong. That's okay with me. Yeah. I say at the end of the intro of the book, I can list off by name like at least 100 people right off the top of my head who are going to hate this book. But part of the liberty of not being in the ministry and being an official spokesperson of Jesus anymore is that I don't give a toss who agrees with me and who doesn't. So there,
Yeah.
And so that's, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and you were very much, your role within the presbytery was kind of like the theology police, you were almost, I don't know if there's a word for it, but was it like a prosecutor? If someone went far off of the reform soteriology, you went and got him, you're a bit of a bulldog, and you're also, I will say this on your behalf.
Yeah, I'm not proud of that.
But I think what's interesting is that to watch your shift, and it's not, you're an intelligent dude. Like, it's not like you're just, you're just as easily, you're a critical thinker. Anyone who listens to drunk ex-pastors, I listen to that and I think I could not keep up with you two in a room in conversation. You guys you're intelligent. And now if the only thing I knew of you was the video of people tripping over the step in Barcelona. One of my favorite YouTube clips ever, I have to say, but you need to Google that. How do they find that, Jason?
I think if you go on YouTube and type in Barcelona trips, maybe that'll help you find it. Christian and I were sitting out in this plaza in Barcelona like a few years ago, and there's this little step, and everyone who would walk into the plaza would not know it's there, and so they'd step down and like flip out and like, oh, and they'll almost fall. And Christian got like 5 minutes of video of it, and I'm just in the foreground just laughing about all these people. That was pretty funny.
So, and here's kind of where I'm going with this. For our church planners, they are constantly, and I think church planners tend to, you kind of develop this because you're always talking to people, particularly the church planners I think our audience caters to, which is not your big box church plant launches, but more your guys are going to go into a community, settle in there, become a part of that community, appreciate it, learn as much from it, have that kind of humble stance that they have to learn to listen to people a lot. And that's one of the values, I think, of what you've brought to the table with you and Christian. Christian is an ex-pastor. He was an if I'm not mistaken, I didn't know Christian, but wasn't he a missionary pastor also in Hungary at the same time?
Yeah. Yep.
Mm-hmm. And so now he is an atheist, and the conversation,
he's an agnostic,
sorry. And your conversations together, to me, have immense value. Just listening to you two talk, because you often talk about, Christianity or just, world events and a whole host of things, and Bieber. And, it is to me very enlightening to hear that and to watch that you yourself still believe with your best friend who does not. And I just think that kind of ability to listen is one of the reasons, again, that I have you on here, because I respect you. And it's easy to dismiss somebody when they make a change that maybe you yourself haven't made. But when someone you respect does so, you listen to them and say, oh, wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, thank you. And one of the things, too, is that, until a person has done an about face with regard to some belief that he or she has had that they no longer have, like until you've changed your mind, it's easy to, hold on to all of your beliefs with such a tight grip because you've never been challenged and have never had to, rethink anything or admit you may have been mistaken. But once you do, change your mind about something significant, what I think that ought to do and what it's done for me is make me hold all the other beliefs I still maintain with a looser grip. Because I know what it's like to have not thought it through or not maybe emphasize things correctly. And so there's a line in the book where I say the beautiful thing about being wrong is it frees you up to do it again. And there's something about, having, especially in my case, because, stepping down from the Presbyterian Church was like a public thing, and it was a real big, scandal or whatever. People were super pissed off and everything. So it was done in the public eye. But the nice thing about it is that I realize, the provisional nature of all the other things, I think,
Yeah.
And so, if I was holding on to this idea so tightly, but then I've let it go, then I think, wisdom dictates that you hold the other things that you maintain with a looser grip, knowing that you've been wrong before and it could happen again. And you can see it as a step along the way, an opportunity for humility, rather than being so threatened and so scared of being challenged, which is how I used to be. Now I welcome it because it's like, well, the cat's out of the bag. I don't know what I'm talking about. So bring it on, Yeah,
there's a lot of peer pressure in the circles you guys have, you and I have come out of. But here's the interesting thing. I was never a Presbyterian, but I was overseas at, in Lloyd Jones's circle, which, they would call themselves Welsh Calvinistic Methodists. But the interesting thing is that, I can remember first coming to faith, very similar, and that's really well said. I remember coming to faith, and I picked up Revelation, like you do. I'm reading through Revelation, and it clearly looked to me one way. And then I started listening to Christian radio, and all the preachers were telling me, hey, there's this pre-trib rapture, and this is going to happen. And I remember going, okay, I'll believe that then, because these guys know better than me. And I believe this whole system, which what really got me in trouble, in the early days, when I started wasn't so much Reformed theology, because I remember talking with, Chuck Smith, who was a, great guy. I mean, amazing dude. And, just chatting with him and said, hey, I'm more Calvinistic. And Chuck just laughed and said, hey, if I read Spurgeon, I actually told him I was a Calvinist. And he said, if I read Spurgeon, I lean that way. But if I read Parker, I lean more Arminian. And he goes, just depends. And he goes, I would just suggest you read A Balance of People, which I thought was pretty good advice. And he was really cool about it. And then I go, oh yeah, one other thing. I believe that we're going to go through the tribulation. And he goes, yeah, that's a distinctive. I was like, okay, I guess I'm out. And
it's all fun and games until you get your eschatology wrong.
That's right. And what was funny, man, is like I went through that same thing, but then as you mentioned in the book, you actually say at one stage, I exchanged one dogma for another. And it's kind of like that 1-2 punch, perhaps, that when you go through the second time, because then later, years after, I had a very similar experience, and I came out of the backside. Now I had my teeth stomped out, by a nasty church situation, and was like, I'm done. I quit. God, you're okay. I'm mad at you, but hate your people, and ended up accidentally church planting in a Starbucks. But my relationship was trashed. And it was the greatest favor God ever did me, because prior to that, I was like the Reformed poster child, I was like the protege, and blowing through that, exactly the same thing, that I've never held a view, with the same confidence back then, because, you would read only certain authors from certain camps, and you would kind of, maybe with, forceps, hold something from another camp and read it, maybe to gain an illustration. But there was this suspicion. And I think once you blow through, you start reading guys differently, like Lewis, I was always told he's not evangelical. So I read him. Now I feel, gosh, the older I get, either I'm a Bonoist, that might be my new denomination, or, we should start that, Jason. We could start our own denomination. And, here I am seducing you out of the Catholic Church right away. Look at that. But,
dude, we're going to be rich. We'll make dozens of dollars.
Oh yeah, man. Royalties, everything. We got our worship sorted already, you know, but, here's the deal is you just, you know, again, just commendation for the book. Guys, you know me, if I don't think the book's that great, I'm not going to have Jay on here. It was a good book. And here's the deal is not only does he start out there, but he walks you through it. And if I can say this, I remember reading this and I had gotten to that part on the plane. Like I said, it was a couldn't put me down book, but when I did put it down, I lost it. So, but I got it back. They sent me a new one within like 2 days, man. They were on it. So I got that copy, finished reading. But can I say that you actually probably were more gospel as a Catholic than you were Presbyterian? You painted a picture of the relationship with God that was truly, truly good news. And coming from Presbyterianism, you know what I mean by that. And it really came across, man. I really was like, wow, this is gospel. This is pure gospel. And it's not from the same theological construct. The systematic theology Jason once held was dismantled. But I felt like the gospel came through more powerfully than just about I'd ever read, man. So,
well, thank you. I mean, that means a lot. You know, a lot of it was just born out of spiritual crisis and necessity. You know, because it's like the vestiges of my old life were just kind of, you know, being ripped off, and it was all crumbling around me. And I got to a point where it's like, look. It just has to be about grace. And if it's not about grace, then I'm screwed and there's no point. And so I am just going to, you know, think from this perspective of self-preservation. Like God just has to be this way. You know, he just has to be. And if I'm wrong, but if I'm wrong and he's a judge, then I'm screwed. You know, I'm without hope. But if he's a father, then I'm just going to act like a child before him and treat him this way, because otherwise I've kind of got enough mistakes in my rearview mirror to not think that I'm going to score any holiness points ever. So, you know, so a lot of it was just me writing out of desperation. Like I just have to relate to God this way. And if this is not the right way, then oh well, but you know, I'm going to, if I strike out, at least I'm going to swing and not, you know, get called out on strikes.
Well, you know, it's cool, man.
She's a baseball illustration.
Yeah. You know, I don't know anything about baseball, so that one went over my head. Oh, no pun intended. No pun delivered. But here's the deal. You know, reading through that, this is one of the things I loved about the picture you painted of Catholics. And I think Catholicism has always done this well. And I think I do it particularly well in my private life, although I may not always want to admit it publicly. But it's this idea that we're giant screw ups. That's just what we are. And any theology that doesn't cater to the reality of what you read all throughout the pages of Scripture, everybody's a screw up in Scripture. No matter how you boil it down, they're all screw ups. And at the end of the day, I am, because I know me. My wife gets a glimpse of what a big screw up I am. But I know me, and I know me better than anyone. And I know me, you know, just about any walk. And there's always this idea that, you know, maybe I'm just alone. And everybody feels that because everybody's a screw up. And, and you really bring that. And I think what's refreshing about Catholicism is they're just really open about it. Yeah, we're all screw ups. What were you thinking? And you bring that out in the book in a unique sort of way with Jason Stellman's skin on. But, brother, hey, we're running out of time here because this is a 30-minute podcast, unlike Drunk Ex-Pastors, which, kind of tends to, that's like a marathon, isn't it? It's a big one, but it's enjoyable.
Yeah. It's like over 90 minutes is a short one for us, but you know, to each their own.
Well, you know what? This is the deal, man. I have a long one. We do 30 minutes of banter called Smack Talk. And, it gets long sometimes. So I relate. And when I got someone else on here, it's fun to do. But, you know, sometimes we get boring guests. There's just no way, you know, if you get past 30, you were good. And you're at 35 right now. But, you know, some guys, you know, it's like 23. We got to shut it down, man. That's, but, hey, before we do this, the book, is Misfit Faith, Confessions of a Drunk Ex-Pastor. Jason has a podcast called Drunk Ex-Pastors. And is there anywhere else that you would want to send people, Jay, today to check anything out?
Yeah, you can also find me on the web at jasonstelman.com. And there's information there both about the book as well as I do mentoring, personal mentoring, specializing in spiritual issues and crisis and also relationships and all of that. And so there's info there about that, as well as if you want to book me to speak, if you've got a group and you're doing a retreat or a conference or whatever you're doing, there's information at jasonstelman.com about booking me to speak as well. I'd love to come out and share. Just give me a topic and a ticket and I'll be there.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. And, Jason, we always ask this question at the end of every podcast, and it is, we have to change it up every time, but it's the one that probably our guests really wait for. And it is, and that's my train. So if you ever listen to, of course you did. You watched Mr. Rogers as a kid. They had the trolley. I get the train, and that signals us, hey, it's about time to leave make-believe land here and go back to wherever children that watch Mr. Rogers come from. But anyways, the question is, if you and Christian, since he's your co-host, were to get in a physical fist fight, who would win?
Oh, that's a good question. I think he would probably win because first of all, he has like huge calves, and so he'd probably just like steamroll me to the ground.
Wow. Because
I have zero leg muscles, and I'm really lazy. So fighting is just a big pain. So he would probably win for that reason. Even though I'm a bit taller, and I think I might be a bit stronger, but I'm also super lazy. So it's coin toss, man. I don't know.
Yeah, no, because then you're like, I don't know, man. Do I want to go up against those legs or just take it? It's like softballs that he has underneath his leg skin. So
it's ridiculous.
he's like a lower end Popeye. He doesn't have it in the forearms, but his lower legs,
Yeah.
That's cool.
It's crazy.
I've never thought about that. So he's kind of like, he's not pear-shaped, but he's like kind of Popeye pear-shaped. He's got pear-shaped Popeye legs.
I mean, something like that. Yeah.
We got to be careful because this dude, we don't want to feel the wrath of these calves, man. We gotta back off from that.
He could choke us both out with his calves.
But he's up in Washington, right? So I don't got to worry.
No, you're safe. You're safe.
All right. Well, cool. Hey guys, Misfit Faith, Confessions of a Drunk Ex-Pastor. My guest has been Jason Stelman. Jason, want to thank you for coming on today.
My pleasure, Peyton.
All right, Arnold, sign us out.
Remember, if you are called to church planting, go hardcore or go home.
You've been listening to Hardcore Church Planting. Hardcore Church Planting has been brought to you by the Church Planter Podcast and the Church Planter Magazine, which is available in the App Store for both Apple and Android devices. If you like this episode, leave us a positive review. If you didn't like this episode, we'll be happy to give you your money back.